Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of the Shiur. We'd like to once again thank our sponsors and wish everybody a happy Passover. We'd like this Shiur please to be Refuah Shlema Ram Ben Sar Gittel, Refuat Nefesh, Refuat Guf, and L'ilui Nishmat David Ben Simcha Ruach Hashem Tinichenu Began Eden. Amen. Today we are going to take a snippet of the Haggadah and we're going to analyze it, and it's going to maybe be LP Kabbala. It's the Ben Ish Chai, the Haggadah Shal Pesach. So he always has interesting things to say, and we're going to take just a little bit and see how much we can extract from just a couple of words over here. We read in the portion of Magid, Maaseh b'Rebbi Eliezer, Rebbi Yoshua, Rebbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rebbi Akiva, Rebbi Tarfon. There were 5 different rabbis, Tanaim, who were sitting together. Shayu Misubin, they were eating the Pesach Seder b'Bnei Brak, in a place called Bnei Brak. We all know Bnei Brak, the place of the ultra-Orthodox, where all the big rabbis are. That's Bnei Brak. And they were all sitting there enjoying their Pesach Seder. Vayu misaprim b'Yetziat Mitzrayim kol oto halayla. And they were talking about Yetziat Mitzrayim. They were telling the story of the Exodus the entire night. Ad sheba'u talmidehem ve'amru lahem, until their students had to come and tell them, Raboteinu, higia zman kriyat shma shel shachrit. The time for saying Kriyat Shema of the morning has arrived, meaning they were talking the entire night about Yetziat Mitzrayim. They didn't realize the time, and before they knew, it was already time for Shachrit. It was 5 a.m. Now, the Ben Ish Chai wants to ask one little question on this episode, and he wants to understand, surely the point of this story is that they were so transfixed with the Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim that they didn't even realize the time going by. They were so excited about it that they didn't even calculate that it was time for Kriyat Shema Shel Shachrit. Why does the Haggadah have to tell us where they were eating? They were eating Shayu Misubin b'Bnei Brak. They were eating in Bnei Brak. Why does the Haggadah have to tell us that they were eating in Bnei Brak? That is the question of the Ben Ish Chai. Now, in order to understand the answer to this, we need a couple points of introduction. Point number 1 is, we know the story of the Exodus. We all saw the Prince of Egypt. We all saw the 10 Commandments. Maybe we even read the Chumash. But we know that the Jewish people ended up in Mitzrayim in the times of Yosef because there was a famine. And in Mitzrayim there was food. And when they stayed there, they were treated well, but eventually a new king rose named Paro. They were all named Paro, but this one was the Paro, and he turned them into slaves. He gave them avodah kasha, avodat parech, back-breaking labor to do. And this lasted for many, many years, 210 to be exact. And the Jews were struggling, and eventually they realized that they can't go on like this. They started to pray to Hashem. They screamed out, "We need you to save us. We need you to help us." Moshe Rabbeinu was sent by HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the burning bush, and he was sent to save the Jewish people, to send the 10 makot, the 10 plagues, to the Egyptians, and the rest is history. They left Mitzrayim, there was Kriyat Yam Suf, they went to Midbar for 40 years, and they ended up in Eretz Yisrael. And the question is, if we take a look at the history of the Torah, of the history of the Jewish people, starting with Avraham Avinu, we should ask ourselves that surely Paro should not have been punished for what he did. Paro was justified in enslaving the Jews, or maybe not justified, but at least he should not have received any consequences for what he did. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu appeared to Avraham Avinu in a vision. This is at the time of the Brit Ben Abitarim. And for whatever reason, Hashem decided he needed to punish Avraham Avinu and his offspring, his children and great-grandchildren, etc. That's all of us. And the punishment that he specified to Avraham Avinu was that your offspring are going to be living in a strange land for 400 years, and it's not going to be a very pleasant experience. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised Avraham Avinu that this was going to happen, and so therefore when Paro came along and actually did it, and he was the one who carried out, so to speak, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's order and Avraham Avinu's prophecy. So Paro should not have been punished for what he did. That was meant to be. That was what Avram Avinu was supposed to receive. That was his punishment. Why was Paro punished? And maybe we can argue, and this is a little bit strange to say, but Paro should be celebrated. Paro actually did what Hashem wanted to do. He was the chosen messenger of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's command. And so the answer is, many answers are given. So answer number one, I think this is the answer of the Zohar HaKadosh. So here's your Kabbalah. The Zohar HaKadosh says that really, yes, Paro was supposed to do what he did, but he wasn't supposed to enjoy it so much. He really did it with a lot of gusto and fervor, and therefore Paro was punished at the Yam Suf for what he did, for all the shibudim, the slavery that he subjugated the Jews to. Answer number two is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not specify to Avram Avinu that it's going to be specifically Mitzrayim, it's going to be Egypt that are enslaving the Jews. He said there's going to be an Amnochri, there's going to be a strange nation, someone that you don't know that's going to come and make your life miserable. It didn't say Egypt, he didn't say anyone in particular. So Paro came along and he said, I'm going to be the one to do that. And therefore, I believe this is the answer of the Ramban. The Ramban was a doctor and a Mikubal. The Ramban says that the reason why Paro was punished is because he jumped up and volunteered to be that one to carry out this terrible, terrible decree against the Jewish people. And for that, he was punished. However, the Ben Ish Chai points out that there's another issue over here. And the other issue is going back to what we know, the story of Yaakov and Esav. Yaakov and Esav were twin brothers, couldn't be more different. And Yaakov Avinu was Ish Tam Yoshev Alim. He was the Talmid Chacham. He was sitting learning Torah. I'm not going to make any comments that the scientists made about this recently, but Yaakov Avinu was just learning Torah. That's all he was doing. He was a big tzaddik, a big Talmid Chacham. Esav, his brother, on the other hand, he was Ish Tza'id, he was an Ish Sadeh, he was somebody that didn't exactly sit in the Bet Midrash and learn Torah. He was there ripping people off, killing others, and getting involved in all sorts of illicit activity. And when Esav came back from the field one day hunting animals, he was very hungry, and he came to Yaakov Avinu, his brother, who was mourning for his father, his grandfather Avraham Avinu. And Yaakov was eating lentil soup, nizid adashim. And Esav said, Haliteni na min ha'adom ha'adom hazeh, please pour some of this red soup down my throat. I want to eat it the way that a camel eats it, the Mefarshim explained. Just pour it down my throat. It shouldn't even touch my mouth. Just put it right into my throat. I am so hungry and starving. So Yaakov Avinu said, all right, I see that you're desperate, so now's my time to negotiate. Yaakov Avinu told Esav that I will only give you this bowl of soup if you in turn give me your Bechorah. Esav was the firstborn, even though they were twins and they came out at the same time. Esav came out first before Yaakov. So Yaakov said, I want you to give me all the merits, all the zchuyot of your Bechorah, of your firstborn merits, and then you can have your soup. So Esav said, you got it, it's a deal. Esav regretted that afterwards. Yitzchak Avinu, when he died, blessed Yaakov Avinu with the Bechorah, and that solidified it. And Esav and Yaakov at that point made a pact. And the pact was, and this is lasting until today. That's why the story of Yaakov and Esav with the brachot is so important. Not just a story that happened thousands of years ago. It's an important point that's relevant to us. That Yaakov Avinu and Esav had a choice to make. There were two worlds, and there were two brothers, and each of these brothers only has the opportunity to choose one of those two worlds. Yaakov Avinu, when he took the Bechorah, effectively also chose his world. He said, I am going to take Olam Haba, I'm going to take the real world, and you, Esav, you are going to despise the Bechorah, you are going to decide that you don't want it, you are going to choose the other world, Olam Hazeh. You are going to choose the fake world, the monopoly world. You are going to choose Olam Hazeh. And that was the arrangement and the agreement that they made. Now, fast forward a couple hundred years, and you get to Mitzrayim, and you have Paro. And Paro says the following. He says, hey, these Jews, they're living in Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim was the, metropolis of the world at the time. It was like New York or Los Angeles or Tangiers. It was the greatest place, the most economically friendly place in the world. People were very wealthy there. They enjoyed good lives in Mitzrayim. And Paro said, listen, the Jews are living here. They're enjoying from the fat of the land. They're getting a good life. So according to what the Torah says, Paro knew the Torah. He knew these stories. These stories are pretty famous. Paro said, according to what we know, surely the children of Yaakov, the Jewish people, should not be allowed to enjoy such a life. They chose Olam Haba. Olam Haba is the next world. That's spiritual. They chose spirituality to the exclusion of physicality, to the exclusion of this world. And therefore, how can it be that they are enjoying the good of Eretz Mitzrayim? Surely they should not be entitled. So therefore, says Paro, they owe me. They have to pay me. They're taking my world, something that's not theirs, and therefore I will have to cause them to pay. What's the payment that the Jewish people are going to give for what they take from this world? Paro said they'll pay for it with slavery. I will enslave them, I will make them do hard work, and that hard work will be considered payment for what they take from this world. That was Paro's cheshbon, that was his calculation, which really almost justified everything he did. The Ben Ish Chai says that was a good claim that Paro made. That was an excellent claim. And he was right to say that. Yes. There was only one problem, says the Ben Ish Chai, and this is where Paro went wrong, where he didn't realize this. And this is ultimately why Paro got punished. So keep this in mind. If it wasn't for this point, we wouldn't have the 10 plagues. We wouldn't have Kriyat Yam Suf. We wouldn't have the movie The 10 Commandments. We wouldn't have the Prince of Egypt. Just picture that for a second, a world without the 10 Commandments on Leil Seder, watching it with the family. Imagine this. If it wasn't for the following point, none of this would have happened. The Ben Ish Chai tells us a secret, a Kabbalistic secret. And the Kabbalistic secret the Ben Ish Chai teaches us is that although it's true that we do take from this world unrightfully, we are not entitled to take from this world. Yaakov Avinu, our great-great-grandfather, whether we like it or not, and we should like it, he chose the next world. He chose Olam Haba, spirituality. We have nothing to do with this world. We can't take anything. So all the goyim, all the non-Jews that there are out there, really they should come to us and say, hey, you Jews, what business do you have being wealthy? What business do you have having a nice house, having a nice car, having all this food and all these big holidays and expensive groceries? What business do you have there doing this, having all this stuff? And so we tell them the following, says the Ben Ish Chai. We say that when you get to Olam Haba, you are not going to have anything. That was your great-great-grandfather's decision. Esav. The Goyim are not going to have anything. The Chasidei Umot HaOlam, the righteous Gentiles, they're going to have maybe a little portion somewhere up there. Fine, that's true. However, what if a non-Jew, what if a Goy wants to convert to Judaism? So we know that he is allowed, but there is such a thing as a convert. The converts become Jewish people for everything, for all matters. They become Jews. However, a convert is still a convert. He was not Jewish before, and now he became Jewish. And when the convert converts to Judaism, and he does the mitzvot, and he gets himself a nice portion in Olam Haba, in the next world, so that portion that he receives, that is also the goyim, in a certain sense, taking from our world. We are here in this world taking a little bit of money from the goyim. Everything here belongs to the goyim. This is their world. So we're taking a little bit. Yeah, we're all the big producers in Hollywood, and we're all the funny comedians, and we have all the millionaires and all that. We're taking a little bit. We're taking a bit from them. But in a certain sense, the Ben Ish Chai says, they are also taking a little bit from us. In which way? Through the converts. The converts come, they convert, they do their mitzvot, they go to Olam Haba, they get a nice chelek of Olam Haba, they get a nice portion. That is them taking from us. So we tell you want to have a claim on us that we owe you, and therefore you have the right to enslave us with torturous, backbreaking labor. Well, we're actually even Stevens, Paro, because your people also take from us in Olam Haba after they convert. And therefore, says the Haggadah, that these 5 very holy rabbis were dining specifically in Bnei Brak. Why is Bnei Brak important? Because we know the Gemara tells us that the offspring, the grandchildren of Haman, were learning Torah in Bnei Brak. They converted and they became Jews. These are the grandchildren of Haman. Haman, the one that we bang for on Purim, that we stamp on the ground and make a lot of noise and ruin the Megillah. These people, they ended up converting to Judaism to be righteous Jews. And they went to Bnei Brak, the city of the fanatic, ultra-Orthodox people. And they started to learn Torah and do mitzvot. And therefore, the Haggadah points out that specifically in Bnei Brak, this is important. This is an important point for what we are talking about. Because if it wasn't for the converts that lived in Bnei Brak, so then all the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim and all the movies that came out of it would never have existed. We wouldn't have a Pesach Seder. We wouldn't have an excuse to get together and fight with our family. We wouldn't have to get to eat charoset by the pound. None of this would ever have happened if it wasn't for the converts. And where were the converts located at that time? In Bnei Brak. And therefore the Haggadah goes out of its way to say that they were dining, they were having the Pesach Seder in Bnei Brak, and that made it much more potent and much more real and much more sensitive to these Tanaim. The fact that they were eating in Bnei Brak, the home of the Gerim. I wish everybody a Chag Sameach, and thank you again to the sponsors. All the best.